the book is called Blackout. And as I was researching it, there's another book called Blackout that I want no one to buy.
Yes.
We've bumped into that a couple times during promotion, and yeah, it's a little awkward.
Yeah, no, not awkward. This is the Blackout that there's 6 beautiful Black women coming together to write a story. And I'm just, from a writing standpoint, first of all, I got giddy because 6 people coming together to write. Ashley, talk about the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Every interview that we've done, they've asked us about the process, but it was honestly pretty seamless. I think because we're all pretty seasoned writers, because we're all like very comfortable with each other, and like we sort of know what the process is to finish a book, it was really, really seamless. It went really, really well. Like Dhonielle Clayton, who this was sort of her brainchild, she came to each of us and asked us, if we wanted to write a book together, and everybody was immediately really excited about it. She wanted it to be love stories, specifically because she and her niece had been watching a lot of like teen rom-coms and like reading a lot of teen romantic stories, and her niece had a lot of questions about, why aren't Black girls getting shown any love in these stories and in these movies? And so that was really where the genesis was. And then the process, after we all agreed, we all sort of wrote our stories, and then we came together and talked about the different ways the stories could be connected so that it would read more like a novel, instead of a collection of unrelated short stories. And that was basically it. Like it went pretty well, and it came together really, really nicely.
Angie Thomas, The Hate You Give, bestseller, of course, and then turned into a film and the rave reviews and all of the things, and a whirlwind, and you're on that ride. Again, this to me is an example of this generation, the collaborative spirit that I see in these young people. I love this generation. It's my favorite. I'm sitting there, I'm like, we're going to win because of y'all, because you get working together. You get that we only get there together. So when you were brought in, I know you got a lot on your plate. Why was this an easy decision?
It was easy because COVID and the pandemic already made me feel so isolated. Writing is such an isolated skill, job, whatever career. It's isolating. It's you and a computer screen most of the time and nobody else. And then add to that the pandemic. So we're in the middle of the pandemic. We're in the middle of shutdowns and everything. I haven't seen any of my friends face to face in months. And Dhonielle comes to me and she's like, let's do a collaboration. And I have to admit, at first I was like, because I hated group projects in school. I did. I hated group projects. But the idea of coming together with these women to really give Black kids a gift. This was also not just during the pandemic, but this was during the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and all of you're seeing all of these deaths of Black people, and you're seeing young people in the streets protesting and speaking up and speaking out, and feeling hurt and angry and frustrated. And I'm feeling the same thing. And I think we all felt as if we owed them some joy. We owed them some love. And it honestly, it gave us joy to come together and do this. So it was a no-brainer. Once we got into it and started doing this and putting this gift together for young Black kids, it was a gift for us to do it, to create a gift for them.
So the setting is New York City, summertime, heat wave, no electricity. Who takes the first baton? Who's the lead runner? Who got first?
That's Tiffany. That's Tiffany D.
Okay.
Jackson. If you read Tiffany's books, you know she does thrillers. And usually somebody is dead in the book, but we kind of got her to reel it in this time.
All right. So yeah. She kicked it off. She kicked it off with her pizzazz. Who took the second leg?
That was,
I think Nick is second.
Yes.
But which Nick? Nick Stone or Nicola Yoon?
Nick Stone.
Okay.
But it's interesting because Tiffany divided her story up. So her story is really like the backbone of the novel. So you dip in and out of her story. Her story is divided into 5 acts. So it's like Tiffany, The Long Walk, Act 1. And then we jump into Nick's story. And as Tiffany's characters, so Tiffany's story is called The Long Walk because her characters are walking from Harlem all the way to Brooklyn. And as her characters walk, you bump into different neighborhoods and different buildings, and that's where the other stories are taking place. So you start in Harlem with Tiffany's story, and then you bump into Nick's story, which is happening in a subway station. And then you go back to Tiffany's characters, you see them walking more, and then you bump into, I think my story is next, which is happening in a brownstone. And then you have Tiffany's again. And then who's after that? I think
Dhonielle. Yeah,
Yeah.
at the library.
Right.
Yep.
And then Tiffany's characters, I think they're in Times Square. And then you bump into you, right, Angie?
My characters, yeah. I have a group of kids from Mississippi on the
I was gonna
tour
say,
bus.
what you know about the subway? You from Jackson, Mississippi. What you know about New York City?
Look, I know the tourist side of it. So I got a bunch of kids from Mississippi stuck on a double-decker tour bus going through the city. And like, you know, you get to see New York through some real Southern kids' eyes in my story.
Love it. Okay, so the love story, because I was just thinking, you know, the peacefulness of joy, the peacefulness, the not having to think about things, that every day, if you're Black in America, you are thinking about things that other kids have the privilege to not have to think about. So this is a gift. How do you inculcate that into a book that 6 people joined in? That joy that you talk about, that is so necessary. How did you do it?
Well, I think we had to tap into it for ourselves. And the fact that we were coming together and doing this, that brought us joy. But, you know, when all of these things were happening, the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement coming to, you know, such a boiling point in this country, I think that it was easy for us to say, you know what, let's escape into this story with this joy. There's no mention of the pandemic in this book at all. There's no mention of protests and police brutality in this book at all. And in a way, that was healing for us. We wanted to show Black kids a world that we hope that they can have one day, where they're not worried about those things. You know, I always say my biggest hopes for my books, specifically The Hate U Give, is that it becomes irrelevant. And for that book to become irrelevant, we have to show kids a world where that doesn't matter. And so I think that for us, where those things aren't happening, where those things aren't occurring, we have to show them a new normal. And I think that was it for us in crafting this book, and crafting a new normal for them, where they're not worried about those things. We filled ourselves with joy to hopefully give them some joy.
That's the responsibility of writers, actually, to create a world that you want to live in, or create a world that doesn't exist. You know, we were celebrating Octavia Butler's birthday on the 22nd. And I was like, this woman saw some things, but she also had us in space, outer space, on different planets, and you know, like, to create worlds that we couldn't even imagine. That's the responsibility of a good writer. And I'm going to challenge you, Angie. Your book will never be irrelevant. It'll be like Huckleberry Finn, or maybe, you know, a book that, you know, classic Shakespeare. You know, we're not still dressing and talking like that, you know, but we can still study it, right? Like, it should be something that is a classic that we can tap into, not irrelevant. Who Ashley has the steamiest love scenes?
Do I?
I think you do, actually. I think you do. Ashley, if you want all the feels.
I was gonna add, though, really quickly. I do think that, you know, everything that Angie said is true. We wanted to write a world where kids don't have to worry about that. But I also think the world that we wrote is very realistic, right? Like, Black kids are still just out here being kids. Black kids are still falling in love. They're still kissing on, you know, bridges and in basements, and they're still living their best lives, even with all this stuff that's going on in the background. They might be thinking about it, but they're not thinking about it every second of every day, and they're still being kids. And so I think that was really important to show as well. Like, you know, these are Black kids, but they're also just kids. Like Black people are just as human as everybody else. So sorry, but we can get back to the steamy love scenes now.
Because your next book is also it's got love interests coming in. It's very what inspired you, and give us a little, because I know Angie, I know her backstory. Ashley Woodfolk. Am I saying your name? Is it Woodfolk or is it Woodfolk?
Woodfolk. Yeah, you're saying it right.
Where you from? Who your people? Tell us how you grew up.
I'm from Washington, D.C., born and raised. I went to school in Jersey, and then I've been in New York ever since I graduated college. So I'm kind of a DC/Brooklyn girl. I am married and I have a little baby boy. And yeah, I've been writing for as long as I can remember, but my first book came out a couple years ago, and it's been like full steam ahead since then. But I guess, something relevant to my story and to some of the books that I have coming out soon is that I came out as queer when I was 30, which I was already married to a man. And it was just like a very interesting experience to go through that at an older age than, a lot of people typically sort of come into their sexuality much younger. And so it's been a very, I would say, cathartic and healing experience to be able to write queer stories, because that's not something that I had a ton of, I had some experience, but it's not something I had a ton of experience with when I was younger. And so it's really nice to be able to write about that now and talk about those feelings now.
First of all, stop lying about your age, number one. She said she was 30. After 30. She's 35. Okay, stop lying. Okay, number one. Number two, are you still married to that man, or are you married to somebody else now?
I'm married to the same man. Yeah.
Girl, we're gonna have a separate conversation, because I don't want, I want to take away from Blackout, but that's a whole story. Smiz, make sure she comes back on the show. I need to talk to her about all of this. The most powerful thing of Blackout, and this should be summer reading. If you have children, we are encouraging kids to read. When adults, I love young adult books. It's my favorite genre, because I think y'all are the best writers. Like, the best writers are in that genre, because you have to create the worlds in such a way, and there's a just a lightness to it. Even the serious subjects. When kids pick this up, what do you want them to walk away with? Angie first.
That not just their lives matter, but their dreams matter, their hope matters, their love matters, their joy matters.
Did she get stuck?
She
got stuck on that. Come on.
I always think about non-Black kids. Oh, am I stuck? Am I frozen?
Yeah, it's okay. Let it go. Okay. Can't hold us back.
Okay. I always think about non-Black kids. Want non-Black kids to get out of it, and I really want them to, with the feeling that Black kids are just human as they are, just as full of love as they are, just deserving of a great love story as they are. So think about everything that Angie said for Black kids.
And I think what you're saying is important about non-Black kids. I pray we get to a place where, I hate the fact that books are categorized based on race, as if we all grew up, those of us, I was an English major as well, you have to read the classics, whatever that means, right? And you have to read all of the books, and you have to find yourself in these books where you don't exist. Like, that is the norm for Black people. So the fact that a kid has to read, when we talk about critical race theory, which is a specific thing for law school, it has nothing to do with history, that somehow, a non-Black kid or non-melanated kid will read something and feel bad about themselves, as if they can't see themselves in all of these characters. That's the problem, I think, in America, that we have these places that we go to where we can't see ourselves. We can, Black people, because we've always had to. White folk need to figure out how to see themselves in our content, in our faces. Maybe we wouldn't have police brutality and all that other stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that if some of our former political leaders read books about Black kids, when they were kids, written by Black authors, maybe we wouldn't have to say Black Lives Matter. It would be understood.
And on that note,